Hello and welcome to the 179th edition of the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm the professor, Matt Perkins. And a smash fade across the Harpeth River from me here in the Music City, it's our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton.
I love the good smash fade concept. It's such a beautiful concept, especially when you catch a team in one high, especially cover one. It's almost automatic. It's almost like stealing. But glad to be here, guys. It was a very good, slow week of college football. And as a little teaser, somebody on one of our teams ended up on the segment You Got Mossed. Stay tuned to find out who it was.
All right. Well, we can't get started without the third amigo in the second city, a man who's not afraid to eat Chinese food for breakfast. It's our intrepid blogger from Big Ten Accounting, Josh Cook.
Ironically, the lady and I had Chinese tonight.
How was it?
So we were running some errands and just got Panda to speed things along. So it was very, very greasy American orange chicken. So it was naturally delicious.
Obviously. Never going to turn that down. All right. Well, we had a ton to get through this past weekend. We will start it off with some quick slants. So, Josh, what caught your eye this weekend?
Yeah, two coaching carousel notes. Colorado fired Mike McIntyre. This is the guy that's been coaching there for about 6 seasons. He didn't quite make it through his sixth and final season, but he did take them to the Pac-12 title game a year ago, and things were looking up a few seasons ago, but they just hadn't been doing very well in 2017 and 2018. But what really caught my eye was some of the stuff the athletic director said. He wants someone with head coaching experience, and this was his list. Former Oregon coach and Chicago Bears offensive coordinator, Mark Helfrich, so a guy who flamed out in college. Fresno State coach Jeff Tedford, who very good at Fresno, but let's be honest, he flamed out at a Pac-12 school. Boise coach Brian Harrison. I'm not sure that's a great fit considering they took another Boise State coach, Dan Haskins, and it went horribly, horribly wrong. And finally, Dana Holgerson, who has proven to be incapable of getting West Virginia over the hump. So I'm fine with them cutting McIntyre loose after 6 seasons. But I was very underwhelmed by that list. And then the other coaching carousel thing that caught my eye was William and Mary in the FCS. They hired former Virginia coach Mike London. Now, that doesn't sound too inspiring, but prior to the Virginia gig, this guy won a boatload of games at Richmond, including a national title. So I think all things considered, this is a great hire for William and Mary, who is replacing a legend. Their current coach has been there for like 30 years, and we'll talk more about him when we get to the FCS playoff preview later. But just first impressions was what a good hire for William and Mary.
All right. Coach, what had caught your eye this weekend?
Well, Les Miles losing his community involvement. Yeah. That caught my eye. Other than the flub and the
Hold on, Coach. You have to explain that for people who haven't seen what you're referring to.
Yeah, I'm about to. So Les Miles, as we know, gets hired at Kansas, or if you don't know, this is breaking news. Les Miles is the new head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. So as he's sitting there wearing his hat as lightly on top of his head as he possibly can, as he does, he's going through his press conference and just all of a sudden completely derails his train of thought. And he's sitting there and he just starts stuttering. He pauses. He's like,
and he pauses for like 8 seconds. It is a very, very long, pronounced pause.
And it's awkward because he wants to say community, and he said community, I don't know, 7 words ago from his pause. And it was one of those things where you're like, Come on, coach. You know the word. Come on. Community. Say community. Did the teleprompter go down? Did your jabroni in the back holding the cue cards? Did he have to go take a leak or something? What the heck is going on here? It was extremely awkward, and it has made for great conversation amongst the people on Twitter. So, but overall, I think it'll be a good hire. I think it'll be a positive hire for them. I mean, they're not, they just want to get bowl eligible, and I think if he makes them bowl eligible 3 seasons in a row, they're going to build a statue of him. So the expectations aren't extremely high for Les Miles, which is good because he'll need some time to get in there and recruit and just kind of do the weird voodoo magic that he does. So,
yeah, that'll be fun. He has an uphill battle in front of him, and unfortunately for us, Josh, it makes it so your preseason prediction will no longer come true. So.
No, but I will get half points if for some reason Burt Bielema goes to Kansas State.
Yeah, we'll give you half credit for that one. As the person who grades everything on this podcast, I believe it's within my rights to do so. I'm going to be an only child here for a minute. Both of my alma maters had pretty exciting wins this weekend, so I'm just going to talk about those two. So we'll start with my undergrad institution, the Wisconsin Badgers, who went into Purdue and looked like absolute hot garbage for the first half. Coach, you can attest to that. I was sitting next to you during the game. Mm-hmm. Turned it up the second half, though. They were a different team, eventually won 47-44 in overtime. It was a very pleasant way to spend the afternoon of my 33rd birthday, thanks to Coach and his wife, who hosted me and my wife for an afternoon of football and buffalo chicken dip, which is the proper way to celebrate. Basically, the story for this game, though, Jonathan Taylor, he had your usual ho-hum, 33 carries for 321 yards and 3 scores. Taylor opened the second half with an 80-yard touchdown, scored twice in overtime, and as well as the Badgers played on offense, though, and they had 545 total yards. Their defense was equally as bad. They gave up 386 and 4 scores through the air to David Blau. Nonetheless, a pretty darn exciting game. My second institution, the UCLA Bruins, came from behind to beat USC at the Rose Bowl on Saturday, basically all on the back of Joshua Kelly, the junior tailback, who did his best Jonathan Taylor impression, carrying the ball 40 times for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wilton Spate added another 2 scores. Bruins held USC to only 3 second-half points. Josh, you think this will be the beginning of the end for Clay Helton?
I mean, I got to be honest. I think all three of us had it as the beginning of the end a few weeks ago. Just look at the warning signs. Relieving T. Martin of the play calling duties, not a good sign. Just the general lack of pop offensively. They've got so many athletes there at USC, and I mean, let's be honest. They are the Alabama of the Pac-12. They're the Ohio State of the Pac-12. You think Columbus, Tuscaloosa is sitting through what Clay Helton's done since that Rose Bowl? He's done.
No, not a chance. Coach, you think he's gone too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No chance.
All right. Well, Josh, what have you got for your second slam?
I got a 4-game grab bag for you, just some things that caught my eye. I got to naturally start with my Hawkeyes. They won 63-0. Where has that been all year? But the reason this game caught my eye was worst loss in program history for Illinois. Lovey, this is several years into your rebuild. You should not be having a program worst loss this juncture of your rebuild. Next thing that caught my eye, Boston College. You never want to say a game is over when a missed field goal makes it 0-0, but Boston College ended up losing by 1, and on the early in the game, the Florida State Noles, they throw an interception. It's returned to the 24-yard line. So BC is almost in the red zone already. They even gained 12 yards on their drive, yet they miss a chip shot field goal and would lose by 1. That is hard luck. Sorry, Boston College. The other thing that caught my eye was hard luck over in Arizona State. They lost by 2 points late in the game. Arizona State scores a touchdown to make it that 2-point margin. They would miss a 2-point conversion to tie the game, but an Oregon interception would bail them out. It's picked off right about midfield, just on the plus side. So Arizona State 46 yards away from pay dirt, but frankly, they're just looking to get into field goal territory. 3 plays later, lost fumble, game over. Oregon runs out the clock. Hard luck. Those are tough ways to lose. And then finally, talk about how the mighty have fallen. Virginia Tech, you're 4-6. They've scheduled a conditional game against Marshall. Basically, if Virginia Tech beats Virginia, then, we'll play Marshall for a 12th game to try and get to a 26th straight bowl. At some point, playing in the Crap Fest Bowl, also known as the Belk Bowl, for a 26th year is pointless. Now, this has been a terrible campaign all around. Virginia Tech has looked awful this year. And this is just a bad look. I don't know why Fuente's doing this. You can shine it up that the team needs more practice. Now, what the team needs is to be healthy and get some better recruits. This is just asinine, and it reeks of desperate.
Yeah, I don't love that. And I don't know that they'll even beat Marshall necessarily.
No, that would be hilarious if they beat Virginia, schedule this game, and then lose to Marshall.
I wouldn't put it past Doc Holliday and his crew.
No, and I mean, for Marshall, they're already, Marshall's got 7 wins already.
Mm-hmm.
They can't make the title game of the conference, most likely, because all the tiebreakers were going against them. But they could improve their whole position and stuff.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Bizarre.
And yeah. Anyhow, Coach, anything else on your mind from this weekend?
Well, we almost got a weak SEC title, or a weak SEC slate, I should say, that got interesting. First things first, I want to kind of get rid of the conference versus conference games. There was, there was 1, 2, 3. One of them was two of them were extreme blowouts, and one of them was a good close game. Vanderbilt, a much needed win against Ole Miss. Ole Miss just dreadful, but they had a chance at the end. And Tiama.
No, that was a fun one. Actually,
it was a fun game between two mediocre SEC teams. Sorry, Ashley and Lauren.
And Meg, let's face it.
And Meg. But the one game I wanted to highlight was the 2:30 CBS game. A huge recruiting weekend for the Vols. They're all excited. They have a lot of momentum now. They're coming off a big win against their rival Kentucky, and Nolan Smith, number 1 player in the country, is in attendance. All these recruits are here, and they got sat down. Mizzou said, "Go sit in the corner." It was Dooley's revenge. A few things. Jared Guarantano, he was injured. Kellen Christ was really bad. There was 3 turnovers in the game for Tennessee. 2 of them resulted in touchdowns. One was a pick six. The other was a scoop and score. Tackling was horrendous, and Drew Lock was, let's just say he was Drew Lock, and he was extremely sharp. 21 of 30. Not a ton of yards, but he was efficient. He threw for 2 touchdowns, and then of course Larry Roundtree rushed for 135 and a score, and then the defense pitched in as well. So it was just a horrendous game for, if you're a Tennessee fan. It was a good get back on track game for Missouri, who's now 7-4. They're almost 500 in the conference, and so that was a fun one. Alabama, if you looked at halftime, they were tied 10-10 with the Citadel, and you're sitting there going, "Well, they're going to wake up, right?" They're going to wake up, right? Well, here's what woke them up. Bama fumbles the opening series of the second half after Saban probably chewed their you-know-what. And so Citadel has a chance to make the go-ahead field goal. They're down there in scoring range. They kick the field goal. It's good. Oh, wait, there's a flag. Penalty. False start. Then the kicker misses. And then the route is on. And then Bama scored, I think, 21 points within a minute of game clock. And then the score ended up being 50-17. Also, I was watching on my iPad because it's birthday boy.
Hold on. Can I just interject there for a second?
Sure.
Citadel scored as many points as Mississippi State, LSU, Missouri, and Ole Miss combined against Alabama.
Beautiful. And they trolled them. They trolled LSU.
Oh, their Twitter game is rock solid.
They said, see, it's not that hard. Oh, I loved it. So another thing that caught my eye as we were watching Wisconsin-Purdue. Happy birthday, Matt.
It's a great present.
I was watching UMass Georgia on my iPad and noticed that Georgia finally lets Justin Fields throw in the public eye. He didn't disappoint. He not only did he have 7 carries for 100 yards and a touchdown, he was also electric through the air. Justin Fields was 5 of 8 for 121 and 2 touchdowns. One was an absolute pellet as he was getting hit.
That one made me jump out off the couch when I saw it because he was midair and uncorked a laser.
Yes.
Like, I don't know how someone who has, nothing to plant on, just pure shoulder, arm, back muscles, and throws it with that sort of velocity and that sort of accuracy is uncanny. And now I don't know how much of that is talent, how much of that is luck, but I mean, it was phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, it had to be a little bit of both, but, and then the other one was an absolute dime of about 55 yards to Mecole Hardman.
Yeah.
And it was just stellar. And then, you see that, and Jake Fromm was 5 of 5 for 106 and a touchdown. He threw probably one of the best, we call it a hole shot, where you kind of throw it in that 15-yard range between the corner and the safety when they play cover 2 because the corner's up tight and the safety can't get over. So he just fires a rope to the sideline, and Tyler Simmons caught it, broke a couple of tackles, and went and scored. So, it's not like Jake Fromm was terrible and Justin Fields lit it up. They both lit it up. I mean, granted, it's UMass, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. But, I mean, it was impressive nonetheless to see what Jake Fromm did, and also to see what Justin Fields did. I mean, I was happy to see Fields actually get some meaningful playing time. Kirby just kind of let him go after the Mecole touchdown. He kind of just let him rock and roll. And I think you're going to see some interesting stuff down the stretch with how they use Fields and Fromm, and they might just let Fields do his thing. So
that'd be fun.
Excited.
That'd be fun. That would really open up the offense. Okay, I'm quickly going to get through my second slant, which is sort of I guess I'll say a progress report, if not a full report card for all of the first-year head coaches, or I should say the new head coaches. So I will start with 3 coaches I gave the A range to. I think the biggest home run of the year, frankly, has been hiring Chad Lunsford at Georgia Southern from being the interim to being the full-time head coach. He's 8-3. They beat App State handily. Their only loss that was a bad loss, you can say, is UL Monroe. But aside from that, man, that Georgia Southern team looks great. I gave an A- to both Chip Kelly and Jimbo Fisher for different reasons. UCLA started awful, but they just beat SC this weekend, like I said. and they are moving in the right direction, even if they're not getting much from their quarterback play. That running game is starting to look like some of those earlier Oregon teams that you remember just started putting up some really big points. I also gave an A- to Jimbo Fisher. They're 7-4, but they beat a Kentucky team that we know to be pretty good. They hung with Clemson, and I mean, they look better against Clemson than anyone else has to this point. However, they did lose to Mississippi State and Auburn. I think that, they've had more attrition this year than most teams. I feel pretty good about that program going forward. In the Bs, Dan Mullen at Florida and Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee have both been up and down. I gave a B to Mullen and a B-, but it might move to a C+ with that performance they had this weekend for Pruitt. Nebraska gets a B+ for Scott Frost. They're up to 4-7 after starting 0-6. Still no defense, but they showed a little bit, but I think that's more a function of Michigan State's lack of offense this past weekend. Arizona State, the early returns on Herm Edwards, much better than expected. They're 6-5, still, I think, technically in the hunt in the Pac-12 South.
You wanted to say Herm Fisher because that's a very Jim Fisher-esque overall record they have right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Shooting for 6-6, they'll probably get there, then they'll probably lose their bowl.
Sounds about right. And Matt Luke at Ole Miss, their only conference win is Arkansas, but I still think...
Who's that?
I still think that...
Play football in Arkansas?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might have been a typo on my part. I think it actually reads...
you must have meant Pine Bluff. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, Arkansas Pine Bluff. My bad, guys. And Jim Moorhead, I know some people it's a little bit mixed with him, but they're finding ways to get it done. They beat that Texas A&M team that I like. C-, C- for South Alabama and Kent State. I think it's just I should say those two, as well as are getting incompletes. Mike Bloomgren-Rice not off to a good start. Dana Dimmel is 1-10 at UTEP. Again, those are two of the tougher programs to play at in the country. So those guys need to bring up their grades. But overall, I think some of these have really surprised me. Josh, has anyone stood out to you?
I guess the thing that stood out to me is you giving Chip Kelly an A-. I know they're playing a little better and their running game's looking a little better, but I mean, it's a full season. They came out like dog crap. That's going to count for something. When we do the pop quiz and Coach and I miss the first 6 questions combined, you then don't say nice stuff to us.
Okay. Yeah, but then I also you tend to adjust the terms on which I'm grading you. And so I'm adjusting.
You have to give us a huge curve.
Listen, I like the way that UCLA is playing right now. I like the way that this team looks. I like the way that, I like the direction it's moving in. They had a lot of personnel issues to begin the season. That's a function of both the last regime before him and the fact
then you
that
can't be so harsh on Jeremy Pruitt because
I'm not. I gave him a B-.
You said it might be a C+ after the performance. We knew this year would be a freaking roller coaster.
Okay. You know what? Okay.
If he gets into a bowl, that's an A, dude.
You know what? I've got blue and gold tinted glasses on. So
that's true.
Stop.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
You need to be more like us. You need to be more like us. Irrationally hate everything that Georgia and Iowa do, regardless.
Yes.
Well, with the show now completely off the rails, let's go through our spread formations recap, where I get to stomp on you guys. I'm up to now 500 on the season after going 5-0 this weekend. You guys both went 3-2, not bad, but I'm feeling pretty good about myself. So we all had Nebraska as 2-point dogs at home. They won outright over Michigan State. We all were on Pitt -7. They blew out Wake Forest. Coach and I had Washington State -10.5 at home. They blew out Arizona. Josh and I both had Rutgers covering the Penn State game, which was surprisingly close. And I had Oklahoma, and they kept it interesting with I had Kansas keeping it interesting over Oklahoma. And I said on the show, Puka Williams Jr. was, I don't think they could stop him, and they didn't. So anyway, Coach, on the year, you're now 27-37-1. Josh, 22-42-1.
Love it.
All right, pop quiz time. Number 2 pencils out. Scantron's ready.
Here's where the show gets off the rails.
All right. This past week.
Can I get one right before I strike out, though?
This time, I think you will. This past weekend, Wisconsin rushed for 385 yards as a team, making this the 25th time in the past decade that they have rushed for at least 350 yards. That's as a team. There are 17 other teams in the same time period that have rushed for 350 yards at least 10 times. Name them. So, Coach, I will start with you.
Okay, it's clean old-fashioned hate week, but that brings us to answer number 1, Ramblin' Wreck.
They are done it the second most times, 44 in the time span. Josh.
One.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a trivia question on can we name the triple option teams? So
basically, it's a fun way to get that.
So Navy,
they're number 1. They've done it 53 times.
See, where else has Paul Johnson been? Well, they weren't FBS yet, so Georgia Southern does not count.
Coach, that is
Army.
where you.
What?
Army is correct. They've done it 34 times.
huh?
I said Army.
He said Army, and he was correct.
Oh, I was very confused. I thought you were telling him that Georgia Southern was right.
I was trying to tell him that Georgia Southern was right, but
Well,
he kept going.
Well, then, in the honor of Arrested Development, that was a freebie. I'll take Georgia Southern.
All right. Georgia Southern has done it 17 times in the past 5 seasons since they became an FBS team.
All right. I was right, and I didn't know it. Okay. So we've said Army, Navy, Georgia Tech. Screw it. Let's go Air Force.
You know it. They're number 3 with 41.
Yeah. They led the entire country in rushing a couple seasons ago, believe it or not. But they are also a triple option team that Bob Davie coached. Not for how much longer do we know, but New Mexico Lobos.
Yep. They've done it. Same as Wisconsin, 25 times.
Ooh, okay. UGA is running back U, so I'm sure we've done it quite a few times. So how about them Dogs?
Coach, I'm sorry. They've only done it 5 times.
Huh.
And it is a big number to reach. So this decade, we're going back to 2008, right?
Correct.
So not a triple option team, but an explosive running team. Not as much lately, but you talked at length about Chip Kelly, so I'm going to go with Oregon.
That is correct. They've done it 26 times.
Damn. Okay. Speaking of Oregon and Nike and the Pac-12, I'm going to say Stanford.
Ooh, I like that one.
Stanford, no, they've only done it 5 times. Same as your Dogs. That is your second strike.
Here we go. And
Josh?
them curveballs.
All right. Well, we've kind of tapped out of the triple option and teams that come to mind immediately. So I'm going to go with a little bit of an oddball. We know them for passing, but they have an amazing offense. I'm going to say every now and then Oklahoma has snuck in a monster running game in the last decade.
They have, but only 6 times. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you only needed 1 a year, so I was kind of thinking they could maybe average 1 a year.
No, I don't hate that guess. That puts them tied for 31st.
All right. I'm trying to think of all the possible ground and pound G5 teams. but I can't think of any that we haven't already named.
Well,
so I'm going to go back to Alabama.
Okay. I was going to say, okay. Alabama has only done it 7 times. Coach, you have struck out. Josh, anyone else you got?
I know App State runs it a ton.
Yep, 10 times.
And then after them, I'm drawing a blank. I don't know who else I would try and.
You guys got the top.
LSU maybe Leonard Fournette.
Yep, LSU is correct. They've done it 10 times.
I was going to say LSU.
Other teams you missed 22 times. Nevada, Northern Illinois, Auburn, Arizona. This is the most surprising one. Baylor.
Touchdown,
Ohio State.
Oh, I should have guessed Ohio State. That makes sense.
Tulsa.
Who
and South Florida.
Yeah, no.
So to me, the most interesting one is Nevada, because when I think of Nevada, I think of that awesome pistol offense and having a little bit more of a passing fundamental, what kind of a West Coast attack. That's fascinating about Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they just put up a ton of yards in general, and while they were pass first, they ran enough, and especially those Kaepernick teams, they had a couple good running backs too, and so they were, typically, Kaepernick would run for 125, and the running backs would combine for 225, that kind of thing. So. But, yeah, all right. Well, let's move on then to our deep roots from the weekend. We will start with the game with the ugliest uniforms, where Notre Dame beat Syracuse in Yankee Stadium. Josh, I don't know what was worse, Notre Dame's uniforms or Syracuse's offense.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't lose your starting quarterback. We saw the same thing happen.
I mean, and you weren't going to get the same DeVito magic that you got earlier in the year.
No, and I mean, I talked about it when people thought DeVito should start. His numbers were not even sniffing Eric Dodgy. So it's the same thing that happened to BC a few weeks ago with Clemson losing their starting quarterback early in the game. Every now and then you get some magic with a backup, but that's usually maybe late in the game. You just call on them to get you over the hump in an upset. You can't ask the backup to play all 60 minutes, which is essentially what Syracuse needed out of DeVito. It made them too one-dimensional, and it's just a shame for Syracuse's upset bid, but still a wonderful season for Dino Babers. The foundation's there. That program's on the uptick, so it stinks, but let's not lose sleep over it.
Coach?
I mean, I agree. It was just it was a bad situation when they lost Dungy, and it just all went downhill. And Notre Dame smelt blood in the water, and they made plays.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about Ian Book, but Notre Dame's defense this season is probably the strength of that team.
Yeah, I mean, there was a play that comes to mind in particular where you're starting to kind of see. Alluding to what you said in the open of the show, I'm a slot fade across the Harpeth. Well,
smash fade, maybe
smash fade, slot fade, smash fade, either one. And Syracuse tried to run the smash fade, and what the safety did was he did a little fake roll, like they were rolling to cover 3, and he was rolling to the middle of the field, except he went 1, 2, 3, baseball turned, and then went and robbed the slot fade and baited Danny DeVito to throw that ball, and he picked it off. And I thought that was a freaking brilliant defensive play from that safety. That's what stood out to me most from that game, oddly enough, but
no, I think that was sort of a microcosm of the entire game, though. Like every time it felt like Syracuse started to get any momentum, they made a dumb play, shot themselves in the foot, or just couldn't get over the hump. Let's move on then to Big 12. Our first game we're going to talk about from that conference, Oklahoma State beating West Virginia. Coach, you and I had this one on in the background a little bit while we were watching Wisconsin. What did you take away from this one?
Well, I mean, West Virginia was up pretty much all game. I mean, granted, they didn't have any sort of sizable lead, but they were looking like they were starting to gain control of the game, and then every time they did, Taylor Cornelius was throwing the ball to Tylan Wallace, and Oklahoma State just kept hanging around. And when you let a home team hang around like that with playmakers like they have, you're going to get burned. And that's what happened. And so, it was at one point it was 31-14 at half with the lead, and it looked like at that point they had finally seized the control, and then they never really had it. So there's a major opportunity for West Virginia. They could have been in really good position. I don't want to say driver's seat, but they've had the momentum up until now in the conference, and I feel like they could have made a pretty good run at Oklahoma. And so it's whatever. It was a great game though. It was fun to watch. And Taylor Cornelius, say what you want, that dude can ball. Tylan Wallace, he made some money.
Tylan Wallace is just another one, the next in line of the great Oklahoma State wide receivers. I mean, we saw it with James Washington, just a bunch of guys who's come in there and just been able to put up some ridiculous numbers by running really precise routes and being able to accelerate really fast after the catch. And he's the next one in that line, and he's fantastic. But Josh, I know you were not surprised at all that Dana Holgorsen choked this one away.
No, I mean, you look at West Virginia's defensive numbers overall in the season, it's really good. But then if you pull out games against either good offensive teams like Texas Tech before injuries derailed their season, or Iowa State or Texas, their points were going up and up and up in games like that. So Oklahoma State, very, very competent offensive team. But I got to wonder, why was this game so close? Oklahoma State dominated over 600 yards of offense, 7.3 yards per pass, 6.2 per rush. If Okie State doesn't have 4 giveaways and loses the turnover battle -3, they're blowing West Virginia out.
Yeah, they should. I'm not really, frankly, not entirely certain what happened. But, a win's a win at this point. And the Big 12 week in and week out is one of the strangest conferences. So let's just jump to this other Big 12 game. We're going to talk about Texas beats Iowa State, which, if I'm not mistaken, sets up a Oklahoma-Texas rematch in the title game. Josh, is that correct?
I'd have to run the numbers. West Virginia is still sniffing around. West Virginia finishes with Oklahoma, so if they win that game, then throw everything out the window. There's still a lot of scenarios, but Texas is definitely in a great shape for the rematch.
All right.
Because West Virginia has tiebreaker scenario issues to Iowa State, and it will potentially have a tiebreaker scenario to Oklahoma. So, yeah.
Well, speaking of this game, Coach, I think we all kind of expected Iowa State to win. So what did Texas do that made it happen?
Defense, dude. They freaking smothered Iowa State. They were just all over them. They didn't give Purdy any time to throw. Iowa State was dreadfully one-dimensional, especially in the first half without David Montgomery. That suspension proved costly, extremely costly for the Cyclones. They just, this was a big game, pressure type deal, and biggest game of their program within the last 15 years, and they melted. They looked like they didn't belong. And it's just one of those things where you look at them and, they just had that look in their eye, and you've seen that look. Everyone's seen that look at some point where you're just overwhelmed, and they were just overwhelmed. And then Ellinger was good in the first half. He gets injured. Shane Buechele comes in after halftime. He leads this Longhorn offense. They get a touchdown pass to Lil Jordan Humphrey with 36 seconds left in the third. That kind of put the thing out of reach. That kind of put the nail in the coffin there. Shane Buechele proven to be a pretty good backup here. The question now is going to be, is Sam Ellinger's shoulder going to be okay moving forward? I think they're just kind of keeping an eye on it. They don't seem to be worried about it, but anytime you're dealing with a shoulder, there's a lot of possibilities that could happen. So thankfully there was no signs of a fracture in the x-ray.
Well, and fortunately for them, they get to close the season out with Kansas.
Yeah. So
if they need to,
don't count out.
Also
Kansas in that one.
Kansas also trolling Texas hard. They're not allowing Bevo to come to the game, and all the Longhorn faithful are up in arms.
Well, it'll mess up their track.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can't eat track. There's no grass to eat there.
It's a problem. They're just looking out for the welfare of the animals. Really, what they're doing.
In other news, Kansas State walloped Texas Tech.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Coach GQ hot seat watch has got to be back on.
Turning back up again. Well, let's move on though. Let's talk about.
I don't get to talk about the Cyclones.
Hey,
fine. You can talk about the Cyclones, Josh. You're probably upset about.
Hey, speaking of Kansas State, can I say one thing about Kansas State?
I'm not going to stop you at this point.
All right. They showed a graphic on College Game Day about Bill Snyder and the possibility of him retiring. And they put up his little resume, and it said he led them to their first conference title since 1934. And being that we have plenty of age jokes for Coach Snyder, my brain read it as first conference title in 1934.
And you know what? Would not have been outside of the realm of possibility.
And I didn't bat an eyelash. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Carry on.
Josh, Iowa State.
Yeah, I agree with everything Coach said about the defense. I just wanted to, just tap the brakes a little bit on Iowa State and celebrate them for what they are. I know they're not probably going to get the job done now with 3 conference losses, but in Campbell's first season, just 3-9, 2 conference wins. Exploded last year, 5-4 in conference, 8 wins overall, and won a bowl game. They've already matched their 5 conference wins. They have a great chance to exceed that next week against Kansas State, and then they have a remade game. Week 1 was canceled against Incarnate World, so they have a really good chance of matching 8 wins before even the bowl game. So the progress is still there. They're still young. They're still improving on the recruiting classes. So hell of a job Matt Campbell's done. It fell a little bit short on a rough day in Austin, but that happens.
Yeah, that's tough. And, we've said this before, but I really hope that Matt Campbell stays at Iowa State for a while.
He makes a ton of money. He would be tough to pry out.
He's got a big buyout too, right?
Yeah. You look at some of the jobs that are out there potentially or out there currently, and I just don't see one that can match what Iowa State's willing to pay. And I think
there's only one for me that comes to mind.
Yeah.
USC.
See, here's the...
He wouldn't have to change any of his wardrobe. They have the exact same colors.
True. That's very true. The thing I kind of get this feeling about Campbell is he's got a lot of ties to the state of Ohio. I think he is just going to hang out at Iowa State until the Buckeyes come calling, whenever that is.
I don't hate that line of thinking. Well, let's move on to the American Conference. Big game of the week. College Game Day was in Orlando for UCF hosting Cincinnati, and the Golden Knights just put on a clinic. Coach, you and I were talking about this one, and both offensively and defensively, Central Florida looks like one of the best teams in the country.
They really do. I mean, I was amazed watching this game going, I mean, surely at some point they have to make a mistake, right? And
no, they don't. And
they don't.
Mackenzie Milton is as good a college quarterback as there is outside of Tua.
And I feel like every time they do something, you're seeing it for the first time. Like they don't just beat you, they wow you every single time. It's like, what? I didn't think you could get more creative, and Mackenzie Milton gets more creative, and it's outstanding. And
I think part of what that is the fact that they've had, they had a couple years of Scott Frost and sort of had that offensive system put in place. But then when they bring in the new coach who has a similar scheme but has different wrinkles to it, I think they sort of naturally meld together, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
In order to create new possibilities, literally, on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's crazy is that in the first quarter, watching the first quarter, you started to kind of get a little glimmer of hope for Cincinnati. They had a strip sack for a touchdown, and they had another couple sacks on Milton early, and then it seemed like the wheels fell off, and they got a kick blocked, and the kick getting blocked and the kicker getting posterized was kind of the turning point of this game, honestly. But it was just. I'm amazed. I really am amazed. And I'm not one of those that's going to be like, oh, they're national champions, they were undefeated. But they really are the best team in the country. I mean, it's unreal.
Yeah. Josh, I know you were very impressed by the Central Florida defense.
Oh, I mean, how can you not be? Cincinnati came in with a really underrated offense. They'd been scoring a lot, putting up a ton of yards. And I think people were going, oh, Central Florida, their defense is not championship worthy. Oh, Bearcats are going to be able to score all over this team. 13 points. I mean, 3 takeaways. It was a clinic. You said it. And I will be one of those people that says UCF is a national champion. I have them second in my poll right now. I had them number 1 in my poll at the end of last season, because Alabama didn't even win their division. They had no right playing in that pretend tournament. And let's be honest, they were awarded a national title by a service that does it. And Alabama claims titles that just one random service gives them the crown. LSU claims the same title as Iowa in 1958. Well, guess what? LSU got blowed out in their bowl game, and Iowa absolutely humiliated their opponent in the Rose Bowl. So nice technicality that the AP poll had a split title when the AP didn't consider bowl games back then, and then every other service that went after the bowl game had LSU not even the top 5. I mean, teams claim all sorts of bogus titles. UCF has one of the least bogus titles ever claimed because the service gave it to them. They were the only undefeated team a year ago. They are incredible. I've got the number 2 in my poll this year. Notre Dame needs to be in the playoffs. Central Florida needs to be in the playoffs. But because we have a crappy 4-team tournament, it ain't going to happen. The SEC runner-up, they're going to be left out. A decent Pac-12 champ, potentially a great Pac-12 champ if Washington State takes care of business, probably going to be left out. The ACC is absolute hot garbage outside of Clemson, but because it's Clemson and they beat Alabama once a couple of years ago, hell, let's keep putting them in the tournament, get a rematch. even though Alabama will probably beat them 45-0 again. Who cares? It's whatever this old-ass committee wants. Yay, pointless regular season.
Clemson's pretty nasty this year. I'll give Clemson credit. They have a weak schedule, and they're demolishing everybody pretty much. So there you go.
Yeah, it's hard for me to at times reconcile that Clemson with the team I saw play against Texas A&M and Syracuse. And I mean, I guess that on a personal level, those are the two games I watched the most. So, of course.
Yeah, they were, early on with the Texas A&M game, they were still trying to figure out what they were going to do at quarterback. They had a lot of issues, but they've kind of – what I've seen out of Clemson is they've kind of gelled and seemed like they've fixed a lot of those issues. And, I think they're – especially offensively, they're as tough as anybody.
All right. Well, finally, let's get to the Mountain West game between Fresno State and San Diego State. Fresno State ends up taking care of this one. Josh, what stood out to you?
Ooh, well, I know it's Fresno State's spotlight, and we should probably be talking about them taking another step forward to winning the division for a second straight year. But San Diego State, man, they just cannot run the ball. That's Rocky Long's bread and butter, and they are getting nothing out of that. 64 yards, 27 carries. Fresno State's defense played really, really well, but this has been a bugaboo all season. That SDSU patented running attack just can't get anything going. Players have been nicked up. The offensive line has had struggles. It's just tanking a good San Diego State team, but hats off to Fresno for defending the home turf. Your biggest opponent in your division comes in weak. They didn't look past them. They kept the foot on the throat of San Diego State, won that game, not handily, but pretty impressive with a second-half shutout. Fresno State's looking really good. Very, very impressive bounce back from Fresno's first conference loss a week ago to Boise State.
Yeah, Coach, that was a nice bounce back, like Josh said. And I thought Marcus McMaryion looked pretty solid.
Yeah, he did. And there's a drive in particular to open the second half in which he hit Keyshawn Johnson, and he gave him the damn ball for a 32-yard gain. He set up a Rivers touchdown that capped the drive, and there's this whole big, long paragraph. And then after the paragraph, the next sentence is the Aztecs offense didn't cross midfield the rest of the way. So he had a really good I thought he had a really good game. Unfortunately, he thought it ended with 11 minutes to go in this third quarter. Unfortunately, he didn't finish the game. But, he was like, no, I'm cool. We don't need to cross midfield again. We're good. And they weren't good. So hats off to Fresno for, taking control of this division. Tedford is doing a tremendous job there. If I'm Jeff Tedford, they're probably building a statue of me. So I don't know that I really want to leave that scenario. So he looks like he's having fun. Looks like this Fresno State team is just hitting on all cylinders. And this would be the second year in a row that they've won the division 4 times in the last 6 seasons. So they've really got it rolling. And anytime Fresno State is good, that means you have great Group of 5 football out west, which is sneakily underrated for those of us here in the eastern part of the United States, and especially the southeastern part of the United States, where we are spoiled with SEC football. We, honestly speaking, Mountain West and Pac-12 after dark, a lot of times I am asleep, and I'll be honest with you, I missed most of Gardner Minshew's 7 touchdowns because I had to check the back of my eyelids for holes. I ate too much buffalo chicken dip and went into a buffalo chicken dip coma. Matt, you know how that goes. But
it's one of the most wonderful feelings in the world.
So, rant over. Fresno State, great job. Aztecs, maybe better luck next year.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us here tonight, Josh. Any final words?
Whoa. We buried the lead, you guys.
Lies.
Did we really?
Yeah, so...
I did an SEC roundup. Did I?
Well, you didn't spotlight the most important game.
Oh.
Arkansas hits the road to Stark Vegas. Always a nasty road environment. The bells are ringing. There's usually a traffic jam in that sprawling metropolis. It's tough to win there. It is really the New York City of Mississippi. And Arkansas just dealing with all that stuff. They get punched early. They get down 17-0, but they rally back. They score 6 unanswered points. They've made it a game. It's a 2-possession game. But like usually happens in moral victories, it just couldn't quite happen for Arkansas. Down 17-6. They proceeded to give up a few points, ended up losing 52-6. They got outgained by a little bit, 475 to 219. So a few things to clean up there. One interesting note, Arkansas had 4 players attempt a pass in this game. And the guy that went 1 of 3 for 5 yards ended up with the second best QBR on the day. So that's also something I might try and clean up if I'm Arkansas, as I try and springboard off this impressive 9-2, 7. Oh, excuse me, I flipped those numbers. 2-9, 0-7 season into 2019. I might try and clean those things up.
Coach, any words from you?
After that thing of beauty, no.
All right. Well, then on behalf of our own offensive coordinator, the coach, Corey Burton, here in Nashville, Tennessee, and our intrepid blogger from Big Ten and Counting, Josh Cook, up there in Chicago.
Iowa basketball is ranked.
So it's Wisconsin. This is the professor in the Music City saying so long and see you next time on the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast.
Don't be like the University of Cumberland's and lose on a tackle screen to your left tackle in overtime.
Thanks for listening to the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. To get in touch with the show, email us at illegalmotionpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter at illegal_motion.